Gary, obviously you said to the boys haven't come down here and won too often in the past, so it must be good to get that off the back.
Oh yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of things that happen in footy, and of course you want to tick off certain challenges, and obviously winning away from is extremely important. Just where the log jam of about probably 5 sides are on the ladder, I know we've played one more game than the opposition, but just important to actually try and give yourself some sort of space. Our percentage is not great, so wins are just paramount and they're worth gold at the minute. So extremely pleased and very, very proud of what they achieved today.
That's right, and it's been they've been a very quality side this year, as you guys have been. So to put them to the sword by 47 points must be pretty pleasing.
Oh, absolutely, and look, it was probably our pressure acts today that we identified really needed to be lifted quite a fair bit, and I thought our first quarter we did that and we achieved our benchmark, and then second quarter we probably dropped off a little bit, allowed them, I don't know, you don't want to be picky because we've kept them to only 2 goals in the second half, I think it was from memory, so they've only scored 8 or 9 and we've actually kicked 16, so our third and fourth quarters were replicated of what we did in the first quarter, and I think when we do that, we know mentally that we're an aggressive side, and I think that was probably a big difference. I noticed it all week. The guys were trained really well, and they achieved one of the best wins in the history of the club, I think.
And obviously getting Toby Pinwell back and Shane Valenti, and both were pretty good contributors today. You must be rapt to have them back and playing so well.
Oh, it goes without saying. And even Dan Hughes came in and of course he contributed as well. So when you think about the quality and the class of Pinwell and Valenti, and we haven't had them for 2 months, so for them to come in, and Shane, I believe, kicked 2 goals, and Toby was just, as we always know in these conditions out here, he was just first in and distributed it, as we know Toby can, and they've worked very hard on their fitness over the couple of months off, so they're true professionals, those 2 boys.
Have you been surprised at such? You've obviously built some really good form over the last few weeks, and as you mentioned, you haven't had those guys, so you must be feeling now you're getting your best side together, you're playing some really good football, it's looking good for another tilted flag.
Yeah, well, it's only early days, as we know, so we'll take today, we'll let the dust settle. We've got the Foxtel Cup, but look, what we need to improve always is our depth, and when we tend to get that right, it means that both sides are competitive, not only the senior team, but also to the development team. So if we're going to improve as a club, it is in our depth area, and last year we just couldn't get our depth of playing personnel right where we needed it. So hopefully we've learned something from that, and if we can be encouraged by what the younger guys are doing, and even Chris Kane didn't play today, so he's been an absolute star for us, as we all know. So to come in and contribute, it's going to be about using 45 maybe players throughout the course of the year, and as long as they're aware of their contribution level and impact when they get a chance, hopefully then that puts a lot of pressure on myself and the rest of the members of the match committee to keep them in the side.
Yeah, that was one of the telling factors, I think, today, was you had a lot of players, an even spread across the field that really, were good contributors, PLEMING at the back, and they kept those key forwards very quiet, and then through the midfield it wasn't just 2 or 3 blokes doing the job. And is that what you're trying to build, make sure everyone's, knows that they can come in and play a role?
Oh, most definitely, and look, it's a fairly simple philosophy we have. You've got to know your role, play your role and accept your role, and that might change from week to week, obviously, but the guys are fully aware that there is that internal pressure or that undercurrent of pressure from below, and Nathan Batsanis is another one that hasn't played for the last month. Billy Burston's another one who's playing in the development team at the minute, so for us to actually have guys on edge, I guess, it hopefully bodes well, but injuries are always issues, and we just know that the future is what it is, and we can't look any further than what we did today, but it's a wonderful achievement for the club.
And just looking at a few things we need to improve, I think one thing that was picked up, particularly in the first half, a few undisciplined acts, gave some free kicks away for Williamstown, which kept them in it in the first half. Yeah,
it did, Pete, and also too just a lack of composure and poise when we actually had the ball in our hands, and that's when you don't want to be doing things that can I guess, potentially bite you on the butt. So we've got to make sure we overcome that, because that could have quite easily been a fair momentum swing, and games will swing like that, and today was no example when you got a top 1 and 2 side. So it was probably indicative of just that extra pressure that was throughout the match But once again, emotions have got to be kept in check, and those boys were told, and it's just costly for both Mitch Wolferton and probably even Wade Skipper and probably even Danny Hughes in the first quarter as well. So we don't want to give them any easy goals. We want to make them work hard for their scoring opportunities.
Another key milestone today, 150 games for the club for Sam PLEMING.
Look, he's just a star. You know, two-time best and fairest winner, premiership player. He's just so important to us across that half-back line. He's a general in relation to setting up other plays. His score launches for us are tremendous, really. So, and we love him down here, and we can't speak highly enough of just how he prepares himself. He's one of the most professional players I've seen, and that's including VFL and AFL.
So, Melly, thoughts on the makeup of the team to play at the MCG on Tuesday night after the Queen's birthday long weekend? We make one interesting note. John Baird's birthday is on that night, so we'll be having a party on the MCG, or will we get the night off?
Well, hopefully we'll have a party after the game at the MCG, Pete, but I'll speak to John and I'll speak to all those leaders and see how they're feeling. It's obviously an extra opportunity for some guys to play. Others, we're always looking, no disrespect to the Foxtel Cup, but we're looking at the bigger picture as always. So some young players will get a chance. Some older ones will need to keep their match fitness up. So we're just going to have a look at the right balance, hopefully, for the MCG.
It's cold old Williamstown, and unfortunately they've came to victim in the Development League side. The boys going down by a few goals today. Greg, it was the old cliche, a game with two halves. The first half were very competitive, only 1 point in it at half time.
Yeah, mate, and you know, we needed to come out in the third quarter and really keep the pressure on and keep applying the pressure, but we weren't able to do that.
I noticed at three-quarter time you pointing to the tackle count, unfortunately down quite substantially on the first two quarters.
Yeah, it was much better early. We had 20 and 20, and then you know, we were dropping around to the 15, so that made a hell of a difference, and it was just a difference in our intensity.
Tough running into that Bruce today, particularly with a few soldiers down. What's the latest reports on Josh Purcell and, of course, Paddy Jenkins?
Paddy Jenkins, I think, might have done a knee, which is a bit sad for him. I think it might only be a cartilage though, which would be good. And Joshy Purcell just had a twinge in the hamstring, so that took us down to a couple. And then Batsy was pretty good, but he needed to finish up at three-quarter time as well. So we were down by 3 going to the last quarter.
And how has Batsy adjusted back to footy coming back from that injury?
Yeah, he was a little bit rusty, but it was good to see him get through the game, and he hasn't pulled up sore at all. So all's good for probably the Foxtel Cup for him.
For form-wise, Clayton Hinkley's been back in the reserves. How's he been going trying to earn his spot back in the senior team?
Yeah, he's been one of our better ones with his tackle count. He's had probably 8 last week. He's had another 7 this week. He had 30 possessions today, so Clayton's doing all the right things to put his hand up for senior selection.
And the likes of Hammond and Mark Johnston as well also putting their hand up for selection?
Yeah, look, Hammond can play 23rd, and he's been really good, and he's gone back the last few weeks to add another string to his bow. Mark Johnson, just honest, you know, what you see is what you get with Marco, and it's great to have him around the club.
Now, it's a 2-week break until the boys meet again. That's on a Sunday in 2 weeks' time against North Ballarat. How many of the boys might be looking at dropping back to their suburban clubs to get a bit of game time?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many suburban clubs play over the long weekend, so it'll be interesting to see that, but I'm hopeful also some of those boys get an opportunity to play Foxtel Cup, so let's just see what the wash-up holds in the next day or so.
Stone, welcome to Borough TV.
Yeah, thanks Pete, and really great to be down at Williamstown, and looking forward to the game today.
We first want to talk about the recruiting role before we talk about the players on the VFL radar, which is really hyped up since the likes of Barlow, Podsy Adley and now Sam Dwyer. For a typical recruiter, what's your everyday type role during the season?
Yeah, I do some work for Werribee, as people know, Pete, and I think for me it's just to go and see as much footy as you can, setting up as many networks as you can around Australia, because we want to get players from all walks of life into the club. And I think it's about identifying players who have got X factor, players that have got a difference, whether they're small, tall, if they've got something unique that you can possibly bring into your side, we all play roles now. All players play roles in footy clubs, and I think that those sort of players are really required. We see the two sides today, Port Melbourne and Williamstown, have a lot of different variety of roles, and Peter German, Gary Ayres will say play your role. So we look for players that can play a role. We see Sammy Dwyer, who half forward, wingman, got speed, Michael Barlow, strength, and all those sort of things. So all these players have got different varieties, like a bit of a Heinz variety, Peter. They've got everything going for them, and they can play at this level.
So when a recruiter shows up on match days, essentially they're looking at every single player on the park, or if they've been sent with a duty. For example, this week we're after a key backline player.
Yeah, I think you in retention you've got players each year, for especially VFL, Peter, you try and keep the players that you want, and you look at where your deficiencies are. You know, whether you need a speedy, tall defender or someone who's strong, like a Dean Galea, who obviously kicks goals, low sense of gravity. So you're looking for all types. You've got to keep an open mind with recruiting, because that way you get the best possible players. You know, again, we see players that have all walks of life, talls and smalls. It doesn't matter if you've got something that can offer a team. It's about the team that's what you're looking for.
We have the Foxtel Cup coming up shortly for Port Melbourne, playing against West Adelaide on the MCG. It was there last year. Port played South Adelaide, and the word had it was that's where Sam Dwyer was recruited from, his performance in that game. How much does the Foxtel Cup competition mean for these blokes coming through Sandford, Waffle, VFL into getting into the recruiter's eyes?
It means a lot, Pete, because a player that played normal round football each weekend, I mean, you know, recruiters get around a lot of games, a lot of different football, TAC, but the Foxtel Cup's on TV nationally. So you're right, Sam Dwyer, we've seen Big Ben Brown from Werribee last week have a really good game. These type of players, you know, Josh Scipione played in the state game, and I watched that game and I thought on the back of that game he could nearly get recruited next year, because he's that sort of player, plays tall, can take a mark, kick a goal. So he's the type of player. So Foxtel Cup really important. Port Melbourne coming up, West Adelaide coached by Andy Collins. He's going to have a few players in their side. Brad Mangan was player at West Adelaide. So they've got a few players. So it's a really important catalyst for players to get recruited out of the Foxtel Cup also.
A lot of hype around Chris Kane at the moment for recruiters that would be showing up looking at him. What are the few attributes they're trying to look from him to just tip it over the line to say, yes, he's in contention, he's on our list of thinking?
He's probably the build, Pete, of Chris Kane. He's a natural player, kicks both sides of the body, kicks goals, can play in all variety of positions. That's a big thing about it, playing in all variety of positions. And Chris Kane has shown over the last 5 years. I mean, James Podgdaly spent 10 years in the VFL and never got a look in, trained at a lot of different clubs. Chris Kane's been around the VFL scene 5 and 6 years now. And we've always said, the people that follow VFL, Chris Kane is a likely tight. He's got the right build, he's the right height, he's Michael Barlow's height. So he's got those attributes. He can run, he's got speed, he can mark over his head. So he's a perfect prototype, I believe, for an AFL football these days.
One thing we also talk about is work rate. Are there any ones along the lines of Sam Gibson, who got picked up for North Melbourne, a bloke that just kept going and going and going and got leather poisoning while he was at Box Hill, 30-odd possessions? Is there anyone like him in contention from the VFL? There's
a lot, Pete. Lee Kitchen at Frankston's a perfect person that, you know, for the last couple of years has shown, come from Noble Park, has shown that he can get the footy. Lachlan Delahunty, again a Frankston player. They've got a couple then. There's Sam Lloyd, Michael Lowry may have missed the boat, but Ziggy Orwin from Noble Park. So these type of players, Port Melbourne, as I talked about, we talk about those two clubs. There is probably, I reckon, in the VFL now, 20 players in the VFL. If we had time to think about it and go through it, I believe could be in contention to be on AFL list next year. There's 20, I believe. We mentioned names Chris Kane, Josh Scipione, Charlie Woodley's been thrown up there as late by Gary Ayres. What do you think, in your opinions, that little bit that they've got to do to make sure they're still in the recruiters' eyes and their names up there come November and the draft? Just got consistency, Pete. I think you've got to be consistent with your form. Really just play each week and take each moment as it comes. The rest will take care of itself. Stay fit, stay dedicated, have the right attitude. Well, of our VFL players have got that. It's just a matter of the opportunity being in the right place at the right time. As life is, it unfolds like that. So I think that consistent performance, having the right attitude, having the X factor is a big thing with regards players out of this competition. And we'll find this year, I reckon, again, we'll up the ante again. We'll get 10 to 12 recruited out of the VFL. Even though I think there's 20 odd out there. Stoney, thanks for your time and joining us on Borough TV. Thanks, Pete. So
victorious win for the Borough, nearly 8 goals over our dreaded rivals, the Williamstown Football Club. We're in their social rooms in enemy territory, joined by the president of the Port Melbourne Football Club. Good to have him back from holidays. And Peter, we go to a bigger stage, don't we, after the Queen's birthday holiday?
Yes, on the Tuesday night, be there. We're actually playing at the MCG, the home of football, and we'll be beating those out to beat that interstate opposition in the Foxtel Cup.
Of course, taking on West Adelaide at the MCG, free entry via Gate 2, which is the MCC members. So, really, Peter, with free entry, there's no excuse for anyone not to come along.
No, we want to hear the Borough boys roar. We want to hear the stands. I reckon we had about 800 people here today from Port. It'd be great to see, well, maybe 1,000, 1,100 coming along there in the red and the blue.
One of the most popular things also on the social calendar as well is the Super Draw, which of course is not only just a chance for some money to be won through the raffle, but there's comedy on, there's a few drinks as well. It's a really big social occasion during the middle of the year. Held it slightly later this year as well.
Yes, it is on a little bit later last year. I had the pleasure of going last year and seeing Peter G in action, and wasn't he just fantastic? It was even better to watch the young players because they didn't actually know who some of the songs that he was actually playing were. And of course all us more mature people up the back were all singing along, and they're looking around like they're stunned mullets.
And a great price also to get in, but tickets are limited, aren't they, as well? $100, 100 people only.
$100, 100 seats, come along. When we got our new social room open though, which is hopefully, well, we're looking February next year when we hold it next year, hopefully we can have about 300 people turn up at $100 a time.
So we're looking forward to that. Plenty happening on the social scene, Peter, but the best news is we're going into the bye on top of the table.
We are, which is great. Just really, really great. You know, it's 8 years, I think, since we actually won a game down here at Williamstown. In our premiership year, and when we had the run on, we didn't actually get to play down here at Williamstown because of the works they're doing on this magnificent social room that they've got. So it was great to have a win here afternoon, especially since it was Sam PLEMING's 150th game. What a true champion, what a wonderful, wonderful person, and a wonderful, wonderful player for our club.
Borough TV is a Port Melbourne Football Club production.